One shocking reveal may have changed the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe forever. It wasn't the arrival of a brand new Avenger. It wasn't Doctor Doom stepping into the spotlight. And it wasn't another surprise Spider-Man villain. Instead, it was a single name that immediately sent longtime Marvel fans into celebration while leaving many casual moviegoers asking one simple question: why is everyone so excited? That name was Jean Grey. After years of speculation, rumors, and endless fan theories, Marvel Studios officially introduced Sadie Sink as Jean Grey in Spider-Man: Brand New Day. For comic readers, it was one of the biggest moments in recent MCU history. But this reveal means far more than adding another superhero to Marvel's growing roster. It could mark the beginning of an entirely new era for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Jean Grey isn't just another mutant with impressive abilities. She's one of the most important characters Marvel has ever created. Throughout decades of comic book history, she's been a hero, a mentor, a survivor, and at times one of the most powerful forces in the entire Marvel universe. Her journey has inspired countless stories because it isn't only about incredible powers. At its heart, it's about responsibility, sacrifice, compassion, and the difficult choices that come with extraordinary abilities. Those themes have always defined Marvel's greatest characters, and now Jean Grey is finally becoming part of the MCU. What's especially interesting is the way Marvel chose to introduce her. Instead of launching the X-Men with Professor Xavier, Wolverine, or Magneto, Marvel placed Jean Grey into Spider-Man's world. That creative decision immediately raises an important question. Why would Marvel begin its mutant era with Jean instead of some of the franchise's most recognizable names? The answer may reveal just how carefully the studio is planning the future of the MCU. Before we dive deeper, let us know what you think. Do you believe Jean Grey will become the MCU's next greatest hero, or could she eventually become one of its biggest threats? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of the biggest debates among Marvel fans right now. And if you enjoy Hollywood news, Marvel breakdowns, movie analysis, and the latest entertainment updates, be sure to like this video, subscribe to StarEcho News, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. To understand why this moment matters so much, we need to take a step back. Long before the Marvel Cinematic Universe became the biggest franchise in movie history, the X-Men were already changing superhero films forever. When the first X-Men movie arrived in 2000, it introduced millions of viewers to characters like Wolverine, Professor X, Magneto, Storm, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. Those films proved that superhero movies could tell emotional, character-driven stories while still delivering exciting action. Yet for years, the X-Men remained completely separate from Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and the Avengers because the movie rights belonged to a different studio. Everything changed when Disney acquired most of 21st Century Fox's entertainment assets. That historic business deal finally brought the X-Men film rights back under Marvel Studios' control, opening the door for mutants to join the same cinematic universe as Earth's mightiest heroes. Almost immediately, fans began asking when Marvel would introduce the X-Men. Would Professor Xavier arrive first? Would Wolverine make a dramatic entrance? Would Marvel completely reboot the franchise? Those questions remained unanswered for years, making every rumor and every casting report a major topic of discussion among fans. Now, Marvel has finally made its move, and the studio's decision feels both surprising and incredibly strategic. Instead of overwhelming audiences with an entire team of mutants, Marvel has chosen to focus on one deeply emotional character whose personal journey can introduce viewers to this new corner of the universe. Jean Grey isn't simply known for incredible powers. She's known for her humanity. She experiences fear, loss, hope, and self-doubt just like every other great Marvel hero. Those qualities make her the perfect bridge between the familiar MCU audiences already love and the new generation of mutant stories waiting to unfold. In Spider-Man: Brand New Day, Jean Grey is introduced very differently from previous live-action versions. Rather than meeting an experienced superhero, audiences meet a young woman struggling to understand powers she never wanted. Her telepathic and telekinetic abilities make her incredibly dangerous, but they also isolate her from the world around her. Instead of portraying her as an unstoppable force from the beginning, the film presents someone whose extraordinary gifts have become a burden. That decision immediately makes her more relatable and emotionally engaging. As the story unfolds, viewers discover that Jean's actions are driven by something deeply personal. She isn't searching for power or revenge simply for the sake of destruction. She's searching for answers surrounding her sister and the painful events that have shaped both of their lives. Her journey is fueled by grief, determination, and the desperate hope that she can still save someone she loves. Those emotional motivations are what separate her from many traditional comic book villains. Spider-Man gradually realizes that Jean isn't truly his enemy. Beneath her incredible powers is someone who has experienced tremendous pain. Instead of relying solely on strength to stop her, Peter Parker chooses empathy. It's a decision that reflects one of Spider-Man's greatest qualities and creates one of the film's most important emotional turning points. Rather than ending with another defeated villain, the story opens the possibility that Jean Grey could become one of Marvel's most important allies in the future. That possibility is exactly why fans are paying such close attention to her debut. Marvel has built many of its most beloved characters through long-term storytelling rather than rushing their development. Tony Stark wasn't instantly the hero audiences loved. Steve Rogers grew through sacrifice and leadership. Loki evolved from a villain into one of Marvel's most complex and popular characters. Wanda Maximoff transformed from an antagonist into a deeply layered figure whose choices reshaped the MCU. Jean Grey appears ready to follow that same path, beginning with vulnerability before growing into someone capable of changing the entire Marvel universe. What makes this introduction even more exciting is the mystery surrounding her future. Marvel has confirmed that Jean Grey will return, but the studio hasn't revealed exactly where her journey goes next. That uncertainty has created enormous excitement among fans because comic book readers know just how significant her future stories could become. Jean Grey has always been much more than a member of the X-Men. She's often the emotional center of the entire team, and some of Marvel's greatest comic storylines revolve around her growth, her relationships, and the extraordinary power that continues to evolve within her. And that's where the story becomes even more fascinating. For audiences unfamiliar with Marvel Comics, Jean Grey's debut may seem like the introduction of another powerful superhero. But for longtime fans, it represents the first chapter of a much larger story, one that could eventually reshape the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in ways few characters ever have. Jean Grey's story didn't begin with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In fact, her history stretches back more than 6 decades, making her one of the most influential characters in Marvel Comics. She first appeared in the X-Men #1 in 1963 as one of the original students at Professor Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Alongside Cyclops, Beast, Iceman, and Angel, Jean quickly became a founding member of the X-Men, a team dedicated to protecting a world that often feared and misunderstood mutants. Even in those early stories, it was clear that Jean wasn't just another member of the team. Her intelligence, compassion, and remarkable psychic abilities made her one of the group's emotional anchors. As the years passed, writers continued expanding her character. Her telekinetic powers became stronger, her telepathic abilities evolved beyond almost anyone's expectations, and her confidence as a leader steadily grew. She wasn't simply learning how to control extraordinary powers. She was learning how to carry the enormous responsibility that came with them. That journey transformed Jean Grey into one of Marvel's most respected heroes, but it also laid the foundation for one of the greatest comic book stories ever written. Many longtime Marvel fans immediately think of one storyline whenever Jean Grey's name is mentioned: the Dark Phoenix Saga. This legendary story changed superhero comics forever. During the storyline, Jean becomes connected to an immensely powerful cosmic force known as the Phoenix Force. At first, that connection allows her to protect worlds and perform incredible acts of heroism. But as her power continues to grow, controlling it becomes increasingly difficult. Eventually, the Phoenix Force corrupts her, turning one of Marvel's greatest heroes into one of its most dangerous threats. The emotional weight of that transformation made the story unforgettable because it wasn't simply about good versus evil. It was about a person struggling against overwhelming power while trying to hold on to the values that made her a hero in the first place. That storyline has influenced Marvel for decades and remains one of the company's most celebrated comic book arcs. It has also inspired several animated series and multiple live-action adaptations. Yet many fans have long believed that none of those versions fully captured the depth and emotional impact of the original comics. One reason is simple. The Dark Phoenix saga wasn't a short story. It unfolded gradually over many issues, allowing readers to watch Jean evolve before everything changed. That slow character development made every victory, every mistake, and every heartbreaking decision feel meaningful. Now, Marvel Studios has something previous adaptations never had: time. The interconnected storytelling of the MCU allows characters to develop across multiple films instead of being confined to a single storyline. That's one reason so many fans believe this version of Jean Grey could ultimately become the definitive live-action adaptation. Instead of rushing toward the Phoenix storyline, Marvel appears to be focusing first on building the person behind the powers. If audiences connect with Jean as an individual, every future challenge she faces will carry much greater emotional impact. Another fascinating aspect of Jean Grey's history is how often she represents hope rather than destruction. While the Phoenix storyline often receives the most attention, it doesn't define her entire character. Throughout decades of comics, Jean has repeatedly sacrificed herself for others, guided younger mutants, and helped rebuild the X-Men after devastating losses. Her greatest strength has never been her powers alone. It's her compassion and willingness to protect others even when doing so comes at tremendous personal cost. That's why Marvel's decision to introduce Jean through an emotional story instead of a massive spectacle feels so important. Rather than emphasizing destruction, the film emphasizes humanity. Audiences meet someone trying to survive extraordinary circumstances instead of someone already destined to become a legend. That approach makes her journey feel more personal and gives viewers a reason to invest emotionally in whatever comes next. The timing of Jean Grey's arrival is equally significant. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is entering a period of transition. For years, the Infinity Saga centered around heroes like Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, and Thor. Those characters helped build the MCU into the biggest film franchise in history. As newer heroes take center stage, Marvel also needs fresh stories capable of carrying the franchise into the next decade. The arrival of mutants represents one of the biggest opportunities the studio has ever had, and Jean Grey may become the character who introduces audiences to that new world. Fans have already begun discussing which characters could appear next. Cyclops is one of the most obvious possibilities because of his long relationship with Jean in the comics. Professor Charles Xavier remains one of Marvel's most iconic mentors and could eventually unite young mutants under one banner. Storm, Beast, Rogue, Nightcrawler, Magneto, and Wolverine are all names that continue appearing in fan discussions. Although Marvel Studios hasn't officially confirmed when those characters will appear, Jean's debut strongly suggests the foundation is already being built. One of the smartest aspects of Marvel's approach is that it avoids overwhelming audiences with too many new faces at once. Instead of introducing an entire X-Men team in a single film, Marvel allows viewers to connect with one central character before expanding the universe further. It's a storytelling strategy the studio has successfully used before. Iron Man introduced audiences to the broader Avengers initiative one step at a time. Black Panther expanded the MCU by first focusing on Wakanda before introducing its wider history. Similarly, Jean Grey may become the audience's guide into the mutant world. Another reason this approach feels promising is Sadie Sink herself. Over the past several years, she has earned widespread recognition for performances that combine emotional vulnerability with quiet strength. Those qualities make her an intriguing choice for Jean Grey, a character whose greatest battles often take place within her own mind. Bringing that emotional authenticity to the MCU could help distinguish this version of Jean from previous portrayals while honoring the character's comic book roots. Perhaps the biggest achievement of Spider-Man, Brand New Day is that it leaves audiences asking questions instead of providing every answer immediately. Where is Jean going next? Will she meet other mutants soon? How will Spider-Man fit into her future story? Could she become part of the Avengers before joining the X-Men? And what role, if any, might the mysterious Phoenix Force eventually play? Marvel isn't answering those questions yet, but that uncertainty is part of the excitement. The studio has created genuine anticipation rather than simply teasing another sequel. As Marvel continues expanding its cinematic universe, Jean Grey's arrival feels less like the ending of one story and more like the beginning of something much larger. Her introduction isn't simply about adding another powerful superhero to the roster. It's about opening the door to an entirely new chapter filled with fresh heroes, complex relationships, emotional conflicts, and stories that comic book fans have waited decades to see unfold on the big screen. As excitement surrounding Jean Grey's debut continues to grow, one thing has become increasingly clear. This isn't just another casting announcement. It's one of the most significant creative decisions Marvel Studios has made since beginning its long-awaited integration of the X-Men into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For years, fans wondered how Marvel would finally introduce mutants into a world already filled with Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, and countless other heroes. There were endless theories, rumors, and predictions, but now that the first major step has been taken, the possibilities seem even bigger than many people imagined. Across social media, fan communities, and entertainment websites, discussions quickly shifted from surprise to speculation. Some fans immediately began connecting Jean Grey's arrival to future X-Men projects. Others wondered if this could eventually lead to one of Marvel's most iconic comic book storylines involving the Phoenix Force. It's important to remember that Marvel Studios has not confirmed those future storylines, and much of the conversation remains fan speculation. Still, the enthusiasm surrounding Jean's debut demonstrates just how deeply audiences care about this character and what she represents for the future of the franchise. One reason Jean Grey generates such passionate reactions is because she has always been more than a superhero with extraordinary abilities. Throughout Marvel's history, she has symbolized hope, compassion, sacrifice, and resilience. Even during her darkest moments, readers understood that beneath the overwhelming power was someone trying to do the right thing. That emotional complexity has made her one of the most beloved characters in comic book history, and it gives Marvel Studios an incredible opportunity to tell stories that are just as emotionally engaging as they are visually spectacular. From an industry perspective, Marvel's decision also reflects a broader shift in blockbuster storytelling. Modern audiences increasingly expect more than action sequences and visual effects. They want meaningful characters whose personal journeys evolve over time. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has often succeeded because viewers become emotionally invested in its heroes before witnessing their greatest triumphs and failures. Tony Stark's redemption, Steve Rogers' unwavering sense of duty, Natasha Romanoff's search for family, and Wanda Maximoff's heartbreaking struggle with grief all became memorable because they focused on character first. Jean Grey fits perfectly into that tradition. Another interesting aspect of Marvel's strategy is the possibility of building an entirely new generation of heroes. Rather than simply recreating previous X-Men films, Marvel appears to be introducing younger versions of familiar characters who can grow naturally across multiple movies. That long-term approach allows audiences to experience important relationships, rivalries, and emotional milestones instead of rushing through decades of comic book history. If Marvel remains committed to that strategy, fans could witness one of the franchise's most rewarding character arcs over the coming years. Of course, many viewers are already asking about the Phoenix Force. Comic readers know it's impossible to discuss Jean Grey without mentioning that legendary storyline. The Phoenix Force has always represented limitless potential as well as unimaginable danger. It transformed Jean into one of the most powerful beings in Marvel history, while also creating one of the most tragic chapters in superhero comics. Whether Marvel Studios eventually adapts that story remains unknown. At this point, there has been no official confirmation that the Phoenix Force will appear in future MCU projects. Any discussion about its arrival is based on comic book history and fan theories rather than confirmed plans. Even so, the possibility continues to fuel excitement because the MCU's long-form storytelling could provide the time and emotional development needed to tell that story in a way previous films could not. Another question many fans continue asking is how Spider-Man fits into all of this. Peter Parker's meeting with Jean Grey may prove to be much more important than it initially appears. Spider-Man has always been one of Marvel's most compassionate heroes, someone who believes people deserve a second chance even after making terrible mistakes. His willingness to understand Jean rather than simply fight her establishes a meaningful connection that could influence future stories. Whether they eventually become close allies or simply cross paths again, their first meeting demonstrates that Marvel is building relationships as carefully as it builds action sequences. Looking ahead, Marvel Studios has an opportunity unlike anything it has attempted before. The Avengers introduced audiences to heroes who protected Earth from global and cosmic threats. The X-Men introduce a different kind of story. Their struggles often center on identity, acceptance, prejudice, and belonging. Those themes have always made the X-Men unique within Marvel Comics because their battles aren't limited to defeating villains. They also fight for a world that often fears and misunderstands them. Bringing those ideas into the MCU could open the door to stories that feel both timely and deeply personal while still delivering the blockbuster entertainment fans expect. Whatever direction Marvel ultimately chooses, Jean Grey now stands at the center of enormous expectations. She could become one of the leaders of a new generation of heroes. She could help establish the MCU's version of the X-Men. She could play a major role in future Avengers stories. Or she could eventually face challenges that test not only her incredible powers, but also the very qualities that make her a hero. The beauty of Marvel's current approach is that audiences genuinely don't know what comes next, and that sense of mystery is part of what makes this moment so exciting. When we look back at the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, many of its biggest milestones seemed relatively small at first. Tony Stark revealing, "I am Iron Man," launched an entire franchise. Nick Fury's post-credit appearance introduced the Avengers Initiative. Spider-Man's arrival in Captain America: Civil War reshaped the MCU's future. Jean Grey's debut has the potential to become another one of those defining moments, a scene that audiences may remember for years as the true beginning of Marvel's mutant era. Whether you're a lifelong comic book reader or someone discovering Jean Grey for the very first time, one thing is certain: her story is only beginning. The MCU has spent years building toward this moment, and now the door is finally open for one of Marvel's richest and most beloved mythologies to become part of its shared cinematic universe. If Marvel continues to balance spectacular action with the emotional storytelling that made audiences fall in love with these characters in the first place, Jean Grey could become one of the defining heroes of the next decade of Marvel movies. As we wait to learn more about Marvel Studios' plans, the conversation is only getting started. What role do you think Jean Grey will play in the future of the MCU? Should Marvel slowly build toward the Phoenix Force, or would you rather see the X-Men established first before exploring that legendary storyline? Share your thoughts in the comments below because we'd love to hear your predictions. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more updates on Marvel, blockbuster movies, streaming releases, and the biggest entertainment stories from Hollywood, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to StarEcho News, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next report. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.